Hey everybody, who's your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 3 of Supergirl called Fight or Flight. And in honor of this, I thought I would break out my Superman stocking cap. Today was actually the first day where I live that it was cold enough for me to wear this, but I'm going to take that off. The downside to it is it's not exactly broken in yet, so it left these really funny marks on my forehead. Also, the pom pom at the top kind of kept bumping against the roof of my car while I was driving to work this morning. So yeah, I got that. I got that Walmart for like $10 just because Superman is my favorite superhero. But we're here to talk about Supergirl today, and again, this is another really solid episode. Um, just kind of goes to show you that the folks behind Supergirl really are doing a really good job of figuring the show out. It really does seem to be improving a lot faster than other network shows. Usually, I've noticed it takes until like about episode 5 really seems to be the sweet spot where the actors and the writers and the directors and the producers have all figured out really just exactly what they want from everybody and everything. Here, I mean, they are making, like I said, they've been making really great progress. Maybe not quite exactly there yet, but they're coming along nicely. So let's just kind of get right into this thing. And this is kind of the episode where it really gets into, well, hey, if stuff's going down in National City, why doesn't Superman show up to help out? Well, he does this episode, and then by the end of it, we kind of get a reason why he's probably this isn't going to be a regular thing. Now, what's interesting about this whole situation here is that just last episode, Kara was going on with Jimmy about like, hey, back on Krypton, it was considered okay to ask for help. And yet Kara herself totally refuses to ask for help from Superman, even though she's going up against somebody that he's never been able to beat. And she's doing this out of nothing more than pride and stubbornness. So, yeah, I mean, Kara's kind of full of bullshit on that one. But this episode does, I mean, but again, people are at times hypocritical. That's just a part of life. And the idea that if someone ever does or says even one thing that is hypocritical in any way, that anything else they might say or do for their entire life is completely invalid, I'm sorry, that's a teenager's thinking. Okay? Now, teenagers, to their credit, are amazing bloodhounds at sniffing out hypocrisy in adults. Let's give teenagers credit on that. They are, however, not so great at seeing hypocrisy in themselves or understanding that, well, everybody's guilty of hypocrisy at times. People aren't perfect. And just to sort of use a metaphor that I've brought here before, if some tweaker tells you that doing drugs is bad, well, okay, the tweaker is a hypocrite. That doesn't mean that the tweaker is wrong and that drugs are good. But we're getting a little off topic here. So the main thing here is Kara trying to deal with this villain called Reactron. Now, I know nothing about this character. I don't think I've ever read a single comic with him in it, so I really have nothing to say about that. I mean, just that he was presented as a reasonably competent villain. They do sort of go into a little bit more detail about, yes, there are supervillains in the world. I kind of like a little bit more information, like, well, exactly who is running around in this world, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see who else they bring in from the comics. So yeah, Reactron again, competently done villain. Now I'm a little puzzled as to, well, gee, why is it that Superman has never been able to take this guy down? Like somebody who every single time has just kind of come out on even with terms with Superman. That seems a little questionable, but okay, we'll allow it. Um, um, sorry, I'm trying to focus my thoughts here. Um, so action-wise, the whole thing with Kara taking on Reactron, I mean that's good. Solid stuff there. Very nice superhero stuff. Definitely better handled than the fight with her aunt in the in the other episode. So it looks like the combat this fighting team has kind of found well did a better job this episode. Um, the only thing that got me though is like, wait, Reactron has apparently been trying to kill Superman for years, and Superman has never figured out who the heck this guy is or why he wants him dead. And apparently, during all those times they fought, Reactron has never said, "You son of a bitch, you're responsible for the death of my wife." Really? Seriously? I mean, does that seem monstrously stupid to anyone but me? Oh, and then, of course, Supergirl's crew figures it out in like 5 minutes. No. That's just sort of sloppy writing right there. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about Reactron. Although, again, just in terms of like, wait, the whole you're going to coat your hand with lead and then grab that nuclear reactor thing. Okay, something that's coated with lead would totally not function like an actual glove. I mean, again, it's getting into like real world physics and nuclear physics and into comic book stuff. That's just kind of ridiculous, but still, I do know a little enough to know about science to know that's not how frickin' metal works. But okay, whatever. In the real world, a pair of glasses and a rumpled suit wouldn't fool anybody into thinking that Clark Kent is Superman. And oh, by the way, Jimmy, nice job letting out your friend's biggest secret to some guy you barely know because you forgot he was in the room. Now, on the upside for Jimmy this episode, one, it's very obvious that Kara does return his interest, and everybody can see it. So, okay, points to you there, Jimmy. Also, some points when Reacton is trashing the ball. Jimmy goes out there and he shows some pretty darn enormous courage by saying like, "Hey, I'm Superman's buddy. Come and kill me." He'd be pissed off about that. I mean, that takes some stones, man. That takes some stones. And it was also really cool to get a look at Jimmy's signal watch. That's a classic bit of Superman lore. And then we also kind of get to see Jimmy talk about like how he's just sort of been using that watch as a crutch. Whenever he was afraid, he could just push that, and the most powerful being on God's green earth would turn up there to make everything okay. And again, Jimmy's a grown man. He understands, hey, I got to get away from this. I can't be leaning on my friend to solve all my problems for me. And understandably, he probably doesn't want to just switch that to Kara either. Now, this kind of makes me scratch my head if that has anything to do with what Kent Grant was going on about in her office. Like, what's this damn annoying sound that only I can hear? But it doesn't make sense for Jimmy to have been using his signal watch then, if I remember the episode correctly. So I'm not sure if that's significant or not. And I do love that they're setting up shop in this like office that nobody wants because a guy died in there. That's morbid yet hilarious. Anyway, so that covers everything I have to say about Jimmy this episode. Nothing particular to say about Win, but points to the guy for going out there and asking Kara to dance. Win is not going to just be a guy who sort of sits on the sidelines and mopes about like, oh, this girl I like only sees me as a friend. He's actually out there trying to go and change her mind to sort of he's trying to do stuff to get her to look at him in a different light, but he's not being an ass about it. So, yeah. I mean, the term nice guy is a very loaded term these days. And I'm not going to get into that, all right? Let people on Tumblr yell about that sort of nonsense. But yeah, points to Win for handling that sort of situation the way a mature adult should. Speaking of mature adults, let's talk about somebody who's really not a very good example of one. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to ask the question, who the hell would want to work for Cat Grant? This time around, our lovely lady, played by the extremely talented and clearly having a very good time with this character, Callista Flockhart, this time around, she is guilty of threatening an employee with violence. All right, she threatens to throw a phone at Kara. I mean, do you remember several years back when Russell Crowe got in trouble for this? He like threw a telephone at a hotel employee. I think it was in New York. He ended up getting sued and had to shell out $1 million. Okay, threatening your employees with violence. There is no way, shape, or form that this is not illegal. At the very least, it is creating a hostile work environment. Yeah, and I'm recording this from my living room just for a little change of pace. Also, the lighting in my den is really, really terrible when I record after the sun goes down. When this almost being winter time is like 5 o'clock where I live, so yeah. Anyway, let's just kind of get right back into what I was saying. So yeah, again, why in the world does anybody want to work for this woman? And then there's the whole relationship with the fallout from Kat and her interview with Supergirl. I mean, I'm pretty sure Kat left out the fact that this interview lasted less than 5 minutes before Supergirl got pissed and flew off. And then Kat just kind of goes out there and just sort of paints her with a broad brush that people use to paint millennials with. And it's just like, wow, seriously, you're milling all of this from a conversation that lasted 5 minutes. So Cat Grant is apparently a talented writer, just one lacking in any real ethics. Which, oh, what an enormous shock given what we've seen of her so far on this show. And every single episode we've had to talk about behavior she is engaged in that is almost certainly, or probably illegal, and wondered why in the name of God anyone would want to work for her. So yeah, on the other hand, she's kind of gonna have to eat her words a little bit because Kara took down somebody that even Superman could not stop. Now, she did raise one or two interesting questions like, well, hey, where were you 2 years ago when there were all these wildfires and some people died? Well, that is not a terrible. I mean, that's not a completely unreasonable question, but MYOB, lady. I mean, where was Superman when all like there's a million things that happen every day in the world that are bad. Superman can't take care of them all, and you have to assume there's some part of the day where Superman's off doing other stuff. I mean, it's even been repeatedly said in the comics that the reason why he has this job, why he even has a human life, is partly that's just how he was raised, and two, if he just was Superman his every waking moment of the day, he'd just go crazy and burn out. I mean, we don't expect cops to be out there fighting crime their every waking moment. So again, why would we expect anything any different from Superman? But I have a feeling this isn't the last time we'll see of Cat Grant putting hard questions to Supergirl, and that makes interesting story fodder. So that I'm looking forward to. I'm also looking forward to some sort of FU towards Cat Grant from Supergirl, which is most definitely deserved. This episode, we're also introduced to Maxwell Lord. And if you know the comics, you know that Maxwell Lord is a very, very big deal in the comics. And I'm not going to say too much more about that. We don't get a really huge read on the guy, just that he's got some history with Cat Grant. He's very analogous to Elon Musk here in the real world. Even sounds like that Maxwell Lord is trying to build something that would be the TV Supergirl universe's equivalent to the Hyperloop that Elon Musk is currently trying to get up and running. I actually follow Elon Musk on Twitter, incidentally. He's an interesting guy, to say the least. Oh my god, I just realized I'm wearing my turtleneck today, which is very, very Steve Jobs. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, and we also get to see that, yeah, he's apparently a little bit of a dick, and he has terrible taste in soda. Dr. Pepper, man, Dr. Pepper is vile. Is vile. Can't believe anybody drinks that stuff. It's horrid. But yeah, we don't get a huge read on Maxwell Lord. Although, that thing of like him demanding a Dr. Pepper from Reactron, it's like, hey man, I fixed your suit. Does that get me a pass in this situation? It's just like, you're a dick, man, but I'll give you credit. You're funny. Not a huge amount to say about Alex this episode, although I definitely did like her sort of putting it to Hank Henshaw. It's like, look, yeah, we're supposed to be about taking down aliens who are a threat, but really, is it right for us to just sit on our hands and do nothing? Especially when all they are really doing is kind of playing mission control here, kind of helping her out a little bit. And of course, we get to see a little bit more of Hank Henshaw's red eyes, and just the way he reacts, this is kind of making me nudge just a little bit more towards the idea that he might turn out to be the Martian Manhunter. Because, agreeing to take down criminals. That's totally what Martian Manhunter does. His whole thing was that on Mars, he was basically not just a cop, but he was like a super cop. He was like the best of cops on Mars. And this was when he was on a planet where everybody had the same powers as him. And he was still like just the most amazing guy on the entire planet at taking down bad guys. So, plus again, I just really like the idea that the head of this alien hunting department is in fact going to be an alien himself. And that kind of invokes the idea of some of those really great camaraderie we sometimes see in the comics between Martian Manhunter and Superman. There are people who at the same time have very similar backstories and have very different backstories. Superman came to Earth as a baby, while Martian Manhunter came as an adult. Kal-El lost a family that he never knew. The Martian Manhunter lost his wife and daughter, who of course he was extraordinarily close to. And apart from a few exceptions, they're basically kind of the last of their kind. Again, there are a few exceptions. Supergirl is another Kryptonian. Miss Martian is another Martian, and a very cool character. Love Miss Martian. She's great. But yeah, again, having somebody like Hank Henshaw turn out to be Martian Manhunter, that would be very, very, very cool. And oh yeah, also points to Kara during her fight with Reactron. We can kind of see her clearly invoking some of the training that she's got from Alex, and they have that really great moment at the end. Just sort of a sisters hanging out, having fun. And then the real cream of it all is at the end. We do get to see this brief cameo by Superman, but then at the end we get them having that little text conversation, and Clark is just sort of complimenting her and saying like, "Hey, you took down Reactron. That's something that I could never do." And then he just sort of tops it all with like, "Looks like it was a job for Supergirl." And again, they're laying it on really, really, really thick. But sometimes things can be forgiven for laying it on a little thick. But here, this is really just there to say, like, okay, Kara has completely earned Superman's endorsement. He trusts her. He has seen that she can do something that even he couldn't do. So unless she asks for his help, hopefully she remembers what she talked about last episode, he's going to let her handle it because she has proven herself to him. And this kind of also brings up the question to me, like, why was she so freaked out about saying, "Oh yeah, Superman is my cousin"? Well, you're going to have to explain why it is you're running around with this S-shield on your suit eventually, Kara. Were you planning on keeping that a secret? The only real threat here is, okay, Superman and Supergirl are cousins. Kara Danvers and Clark Kent are cousins. Well, big effing deal. I got a lot of cousins. That doesn't mean a damn thing. Well, except that, as I have mentioned repeatedly in my YouTube reviews, I will occasionally regale you with an embarrassing story of my cousins and as to why I am often ashamed to be related to them, usually involving them being arrested for stuff. it's kind of sad when you're probably one of the most sensible people in your entire family. I mean, my criminal history consists of like a parking ticket and a traffic ticket. Yeah, nobody's ever had to slap the cuffs on me. Let's see how many of you guys can say that, huh, cousins? Okay, but my embarrassing family is not what we're here to talk about, so I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.